Well, it's old news that Gen Z is teetotaling. They are barely drinking. They're drinking less alcohol than any previous adult generation. And I think people forget that Gen Z is comprised of majority young adults who are very close to approaching the big 3-0 at this point, and they're still being referred to as kids. They are fully in the adult world at this point, and they are not engaging with drinking culture the same way that millennials or any previous generation did. They're just not interested in it. And some people believe this is reason for hope for Gen Z. Others, like me, are saying this is a symptom of a larger crisis, that they are socially isolated and that they are risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a loaded headline. And I think it illustrates so much about the overall mentality of Gen Z.
Okay.
From New York Times, why Gen Z doesn't want to start a bar tab. To the chagrin of bartenders, many 20-something bargoers prefer to close out and pay after every single drink, no matter how many they might order during an outing. This 26-year-old in the piece says, why leave a credit card with the bar? I don't know if I'm going to be here that long, so I don't want to leave a tab open, joking that he has commitment issues. The prospect of opening a tab is verboten. His ethos reflects a growing phenomenon among Gen Z bargoers, an aversion to opening bar tabs. So it's not just that they have issues with committing to staying in one place for too long. They also kind of don't know how the whole system works, and
They're scared of it.
Yeah, they're scared to learn what it means to open a tab at a bar. And I literally felt called out when I read this headline. I was like, wait, I close out on each drink.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know why I do it, but I do.
Do you do that with a card?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wonder, do you pay more in tips when you close out individually? Or
you probably do. I bet you do.
Yeah, you're probably losing money by doing this. But it's simply because they're scared of something they don't understand, because they hardly go out. And they're also scared of letting loose and committing to the idea of getting multiple drinks in a night. And they don't know if there's anyone who will stay with them and not record them with their smartphone and put the video on TikTok. Like, there are so many reasons, but it overall illustrates that Gen Z is the most risk-averse generation to ever walk this planet.
It's a side effect of being worried all the time. I get it in this case. It's like, it's something new. It's something you don't understand. I never opened tab. Like, even, I mean, I was never a big drinker. Given all my struggles and all my flaws, I was never a big drinker. I probably always bought with cash and, individually. But yeah, I get it, actually, because I feel like, I think it's partially due to smartphones and the constant influx of news and information. But I brought this up on the show maybe last week, but like, there is a sense of anxiety that comes from not being prepped for the world around you. So if there's like a bunch of like basic life tasks that you don't know how to do, you're living a life of quiet fear all the time. Like, if you don't know how to change a car tire, every time you drive, if you're an anxious person, you're like, I hope to God my car tire doesn't blow out, because I don't know how to change a car tire and I don't want to call AAA or something like that. And something like this, which is the anxiety of doing it the first time, it's over and done with. You now can do this 1,000 times since then, but they're actually prolonging it by just buying the drinks individually. But also, to their point, like, not everybody wants to buy a bunch of drinks. Though realistically, it would make more sense for Gen Z to open a tab, because they're not getting cars and driving. So they're probably taking Ubers to get everywhere. So they don't have to worry about driving home drunk. So go ahead, man, get sloshed.
True. I remember when I was visiting Ireland, I was in a group of people at a pub, and we were just getting like beers or like cider or whatever. And they were dumbfounded when they came to ask us how we wanted the check, because each American at the table, like, we were all American except for two of us who were Irish. This bartender was like, you all want to pay for your own drinks?
The culture is very different.
You all want to close out on one drink and only pay for your own drink.
Yeah.
Because they do rounds.
Yeah.
Like, they just, I guess it's because they're heavy drinkers over there, but like a group of guys usually will like go to a bar in that country, and it will be like 5 guys, and the one guy starts and buys the first round, and then they go around the table and one person buys a round each, because they all have like 5 drinks overall by the time the night's over. And yeah, there was something like very individualistic and American about us each paying our own individual tab and refusing to do that.
Is it the same way about if you go out and people here, when they go out with friends, they pay for their own dinner? Like that happens?
Yeah.
I
mean, that's different though, because it's a bigger purchase.
Expense.
But yeah. And then they went further into this, saying the reasons for Gen Z's aversion to bar tabs are myriad. For a generation that consumes less alcohol than older drinkers, opening tabs can seem exorbitant. They've been accustomed to one and done transactions with the tap of their phones and consider purchasing drinks at a bar to be no different from buying a coffee at a cafe. They can feel anxious about losing track of their spending by leaving their credit cards behind the bar. It doesn't save me anything if I keep a tab open. I'll swipe my card again. It's an extra 10 seconds. It increases anxiety in me when I leave a tab open. If we want to move somewhere else, it's a lot harder to close out and then leave. So they want to always be jumping from place to place, and they don't know where they want to sit.
Do you know how this is something that actually I think about a lot in life, which is that in a culture raised on movies and television, these are the things that you never see done in movies and television. You never see the inane, boring parts of life that actually matter and take up time.
Yeah.
So maybe if a new TV show comes out that people like, and it shows you somebody opening a tab and they make a scene out of them having to close the tab in some type of interesting way that connects to the story. Like, I think about that all the time. I think about all the things that we do in our lives that are not considered interesting enough to really make into part of the movie or the television show. Because that's the stuff that I spend most of my life worrying about.
Well, I mean, ideally, you wouldn't learn about that type of routine task from a movie. You would learn about it through experience.
Yes.
I don't remember exactly when, but I'm sure there was a moment when I actually asked somebody, what does it mean when they say, do you want to open a tab? Like, I literally had to ask somebody what that meant.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I was agreeing to.
You're like, is this some type of contract? Like, what is this going to be?
And I realized, like, I am one of those Zoomers who feels like I can't stay in one place for too long, or I feel anxious about them having my credit card information or something.
It was also different in previous generations because they carried cash.
And another problem is the cash, because Gen Z is broke. And millennials have more disposable income to spend on their craft beer obsession, which is brought in.
And their burger from Thistle and Thorn.
What if the real reason Gen Z doesn't drink is because they saw how millennials' craft beer obsession turned them all into soft, soy-gutted, fat Redditors, and they don't want that for themselves, so they avoid beer like the plague?
They don't have to worry about that because they're all smoking vapes and taking Adderall, so they're not going to gain the weight. Don't worry. Don't worry.
And there was a response from a Zoomer saying the reason Gen Z doesn't drink is because it's way too expensive and there's no one to drink with. Signed, an actual Gen Zer. So, first of all, because they simply don't have the disposable income to go out drinking frequently, if ever. And second of all, because they have very small, possibly non-existent social circles. And even if they have a friend group of people their age, those people they know in real life are not drinkers themselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, none of them want to let their guard down.
That's
None
another
of them want
big
to
part
be
of this.
recorded in a vulnerable moment. The entire point of drinking in a group of people is that everyone knows they're letting their guard down, and it's a sign of trust.
It's absolutely part of the social contract between people to understand that we're going, you know, what you share with your friends, how you behave in private circles is supposed to be a sign of how close you are as a group. Right. And on top of that, like I said, the up and down from the weed pen and the Adderall isn't helping their anxiety. there's a whole lot of reasons why this stuff has kind of disappeared. And I do think that this is misinterpreted by newer generations who think that because Gen Z isn't drinking, that they're somehow healthier. They're more anxious. They're more nihilistic. They're far worse off in a lot of ways than millennials were, who got to live through a period of early adulthood without smartphones.
Yeah, I don't sit around saying that like Gen Z is completely doomed, because Gen Z is also the most polarized generation, and there are subcultures within Gen Z that are revolting against the trends. For instance, the uptick in church attendance among Gen Z is a reason for hope. But people tend to take these trends about Gen Z not drinking or not engaging in promiscuous sex as a reason for them becoming more conservative. This was a take I saw recently on the timeline. Gen Z kids are listening to Creed and Nickelback. Yep. By the way, they're not kids. They're literally turning 30 in like 2 seconds.
The oldest Gen Z are going to be turning 30, and the youngest are what, 16 or 17?
They're going to church in record numbers. They're intolerant of LGBT extremism. They're supporting Trump in record numbers. They're barely drinking and avoiding hookup culture. This generation didn't grow up watching MTV, Hollywood movies, and legacy media. They grew up on the internet and self-selected the content they wanted, and it turns out when the human mind isn't brainwashed, it drifts towards the Bible and traditional values and 90s rock.
It actually drifts towards like streamers and online content.
Yeah.
I
just this is the most reductive, simplistic take you could possibly have.
They're not avoiding hookup culture. They're too scared to get in to ask somebody out, and they're not entering into sexual relationships because they don't know how to.
They're not avoiding hookup culture. They don't date in high school anymore. Right? Okay. They're not avoiding hookup culture. They're watching porn.
Yeah.
They're not barely drinking. They're doing drugs and doom scrolling in their beds.
Yep.
There is so much nuance to this that is being completely ignored in order to make a political point scoring game out of it, which is so stupid.
Well, I mean, it's what it is when you pick those topics specifically, it becomes a sort of a tool that would be used to deconstruct what your worldview is. And if you're somebody that, exists heavily in the political realm, you've got your own biases, and it's just going to show through with how you interpret it. My interpretation here comes from talking to you every day and knowing your impressions and understanding of your own generation. So what I understand comes from you.
That gives me a lot of responsibility.
Well, it's more, I would say it's more on the ground necessary. And even then I understand that's, that would be kind of channeled through or filtered through your, worldview. How you view these things is unique to you, which is not necessarily that of the average everyday Gen Zer, given your Catholic upbringing. And
I wouldn't presume to speak for Gen Z as an entire segment of the population, although I am expected to quite frequently. I think that a lot of Zoomers also have their own takes on the, basically the dryness of this generation, and they want to grandstand about it too. And I've seen a lot of Zoomers say, "Well, we're smarter than that. We don't like drinking because it's poison and it's unhealthy and it's gets you to do stupid things." That's a cope.
Hits the weed pen.
That is a cope. That is a massive turbo cope for the fact that Gen Z is socially isolated, alienated from other human beings. Pretty much anywhere where young people gather and fraternize and form bonds with each other, there will be alcohol there, or nicotine, and any number of things. So the fact that they're not doing the former means they're not doing the latter. It's a very clear correlation, to me at least. I think it's pretty straightforward. We don't need to it's not rocket science. Gen Z is lonely. Of course they're not drinking.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be like a black pillar about it. It's just the truth.
Well, I can tie it back to my own experience, which is that all of the my sobriety came after years of substance abuse that was part of the desire to be isolationist, right? So drugs isolate you in a lot of ways, especially if you don't partake with other people, so you use alone at home. That's very different than people who start, maybe if you end up with alcoholism, it started by something that you did as a means of social interaction with other people. I always gravitated away from that. I hated that that element of it because I didn't like to go out in public, and I did not like feeling that way when I was out in drinking. But that was me, and my vices kind of informed my worldview, and getting away from them kind of made that clearer to me. But I think for most of it now, if they're using legal chemicals, they're prescribed to the Adderall, they're in a state with legal weed, they're SSRIs,
social media, dopamine.
It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a habit that you break consciously without a lot of work.
Yeah, and I guarantee the health benefits that you can draw from having an active social life and a sense of community around you far outweigh the health drawbacks of having a couple drinks at the end of a work week. I don't buy the concern trolling about health and all of these stupid concern trolling headlines. And I get tired of it. I get fatigued with the think pieces about Gen Z that are completely ignoring both the problems and the reasons for hope for this generation. But personally, my take is I am against this dry trend. I think Gen Z needs to get out there, and I genuinely think they need to go to a bar and talk to people and have a drink.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.